Welcome to 247 Real Talk. This is your host, Julian Perry. Once again, it's a pleasure to be here with you for another weekly episode and the week before Christmas. The next time you get an episode from this podcast, you would have celebrated Christmas and you'll be sitting somewhere on your couch, probably still digesting all that wonderful food. Hope you had a great week. We had one rainy day here in New York. The rest of the time it's been cold but sunny. I don't really like the cold anymore, so I'm kind of wishing for a winter that's similar to last year when we had maybe an inch of snow for the entire season and we can get back to the warm weather. Anyway, for this episode, I'm going to talk a little bit about the Christmas season, as we reach the end of the year. But as you know, I've been doing my episodes. I'm going to start off with a few tidbits of news and then get into the meat of the episode. It won't be too long, so sit back, relax, and I'll be right back. So welcome back to 247 Real Talk Podcast. Again, my name is Julian Perry. I'm the host of the show, and it's a pleasure to be here with you. So how did we start off this week? Because I said I don't want it to be too long. You'll have this episode this Friday, and which is right before you're in your hustle and bustle for Christmas, which is on Monday. I don't know how many of you feel the Christmas season. I don't feel it that much this year. I don't know if it's sort of struggling since you're coming out of COVID. I don't know if it has to do with the atmosphere, of the whole country and the world. But I remember growing up, as a kid, Christmas is such an exciting time, and I'm trying to make it that for my kids. I've got the lights up, and I've got the inside the Christmas tree. Our Christmas tree was up since the weekend of Thanksgiving, right after Thanksgiving, and I put lights up outside the house, and the kids are excited, and they're mostly excited about the gifts on Christmas morning and those sorts of things. But I guess I used to hear when I was a kid, a lot of adults would say Christmas is for kids, and I guess the older I get, the more I get that. So let's touch on what we're gonna get right into for this week. Two things I want to touch on before I get into my Christmas message. The first one is, let me start with the student loan statistics, just really quick, to bring you up to date, to keep you up to date as I promised. Because, last time I had an episode on it because many people complained that I sort of let it go out in the back burner and I haven't been keeping the focus on it. So a statistic I heard this week, and I checked it a moment ago, look at my screen at the side here. So after repayments started back in October, the Biden administration, I've been really hard on them, but I'm going to give them some kudos because through various bits of maneuvering, the administration managed to get the student loan population that owes down from 40-something million, I think, down to the 20s. I'm not sure what that final number is, but of the 22 million people whose student loan payments restarted in October of this year, 40% have been unable to start repaying. So much as I predicted, 9 million people have been unable to start repaying their student loan after 3 years of a pause. Now, I know there's going to be a lot of people in that population, right? They're going to be those who simply didn't prepare. That's true. But there's going to be a lot of people in there who can't. For two main reasons I can think of that I keep mentioning over and over again. And they're actually tied into one, I should say. And that is a lot of people are looking towards an income-driven repayment plan to help them out. The first problem with that plan is, as I said over and over again, it does not take individual cost of living into the equation. Why is it that you can ask me how much money I make to consider how much I have to repay, but you can't also include how much mortgage I pay, how much rent I pay. Why can't you take my electricity bill the last 12 months and maybe do an average? These are bills that have to be paid. Why can't you consider how many kids I have in school, and rather than use taxes, use an allowance that you would, that you come up with in an algorithm for the cost of living today for each child? Food, clothes, transportation, school supplies, after school care. You don't want us leaving the kids at home alone. And have you ever seen what it costs to pay someone to take care of kids? And then when you have a couple who file taxes together, why are you using the income of the spouse? And I know what you're saying, oh, well, it's a household. But you can't necessarily look at it that way. Here's why. I know of many households where both husband and wife went to school, both husband and wife have student loans. One spouse paid off their student loans. They did it at the sacrifice of their credit card bills and all the other things they used to manage their bills and to live, to survive while they pay their student loans. Now they've racked up $50,000, $60,000 in credit card bills and they're paying those off. They don't have any free money because they're now at this, everybody knows what credit card companies have been doing, right? The interest rates, as you rack up money, they've been raising the interest rate 29%. I've seen some people come in a third, some companies come in at 32%. So you can imagine what if you are still paying the basic minimum, what kind of dilemma you have. Now your spouse is paying student loans and you say, you know what, for us to survive, whatever extra money I have, I've got to push it through these credit card bills to get them down. In order for the other partner, the spouse, to pay their student loan bills or to pay their student loan repayment now, they can no longer help me with the electricity bill. So the spouse now has to take that bill away from the one who has to pay back the student loan. So it is not an issue of when you look at a household that, oh, because of both incomes, well, we're going to take both incomes in consideration. That's not practical. That's not real life. In many cases, you have couples where one went to college and then came out and then let the other one go to college. Those sorts of sacrifices, too, sometimes mean that one has to work different hours. And even though they're both, one's in college, one's working different hours, they need to pay childcare even though they're both parents because of their schedules. So the one who's not paying the student loans is now paying for the childcare. Now when you make the other one pay the student loan back, well, this one has to pay, like I said, take an additional bill to comfort those bills. Has to pay off credit card debt. Maybe even has to help the one who's paying back the student loans with their credit card debt. So don't make the assumption that because they don't, that automatically the income of the spouse is free income. We need to do this in a practical way. If I went to school, doesn't matter I have a spouse or not. The education I earned is mine. I am responsible for the student loan. The income-driven repayment plan has to be geared towards my income. I can understand if I say my mortgage is $2,000 and you say, okay, I'm not going to consider your spouse's income, but I'm only going to use 50% of the mortgage towards calculating your repayment. Okay. 50% of the bills are yours. 50% of the child care is yours. Okay. But if you're going to say, like you are now, that the spouse's income, and listen to me carefully because I know that sounded kind of tricky, but here's where I'm coming from. To start with, to make the first change to the income-driven repayment plan, if you're going to say that you're using both incomes because they're filed jointly, then you need to take into consideration the entire monthly living expense of the household. They're not doing that. So the monthly payment they're coming up with in many cases, is way more than the household budget can afford. You also have families who now have to repay money who lost a breadwinner, who are in no position to even pay, even if your calculation says, well, you only have to pay $200. That $200 to them means food on their table, means clothes on their kids' back. And the fact of the matter is, they're paying back for a degree and can't get a job with the income to match the degree that they earned. But they're liable to pay back the federal government. And what's worse, the federal government, while they keep fighting Democrat and Republican against student loan forgiveness, won't even say, okay, you know what? In the meantime, while we act foolish in Washington, while we act like we lost our darn minds and we forgot that we were put here by the people, we're going to at least not charge them interest. I saw someone show me their student loans. They have $71,000 in student loans. The only way they could have afforded the payments is they had to take a 30-year payment plan. $71,000 student loan. In 30-year repayment, they will pay back 181 or 185,000, somewhere around that figure. I think it's 181,000. Think about that. That is what, 150%, just about. 70, 71, 40, yeah. Because that is what, 110,000 in interest from the federal government, the government that we pay taxes to survive, the government that already puts tax on what we purchase, tax on our paychecks, tax on everything that we do out of the same money that we earn. And now you're going to tax us again for the education that we then go to work for and give our resources back to the same company and the same country and the same government? Something is wrong. The greedy are just too greedy now. And we, the people who can't seem to get it together and unite to say enough is enough, we are the problem. I dread to think when the next election comes what the candidates will look like and what happens after election day. Look at who we're voting for. We need fresh blood out there to begin with. But look at how brainwashed this entire society is that we can't understand that we are allowing ourselves as people, as Americans, to be divided so that we fight against each other over two nincompoops who should probably never have been in office to begin with. While we suffer, while they brainwash us into believing one side or the other to the point that we feel that another human being doesn't have the right to survive, while we are so brick-headed that we can't see how circumstances have changed, how people have been marginalized, how people have dealt with systemic racism and prejudice, and how they have been struggling to get an even playing field, and how people have been gone through so much through COVID and everything else, that what we're asking them to do is making sure that they live a life of oppression and poverty. When are we going to get it together? It already feels like we fell off the wagon so long ago that too late was so many years ago. When are we going to try to play some sort of catch up and realize we have the power together? When are we going to realize that we got to throw away this thing about the color of the skin? That we got to throw away the ideology of political ideology in terms of divisiveness and put us as people first? When are we going to realize that we can't have our government sending billions of dollars to Russia and to Ukraine and to Middle East and all these places? Well, they don't send it to Russia, but you know what I mean. Sending money to foreign countries and telling Americans that we can't give you $20,000 to pay off this debt so that you can use the education you had to give back to this same country to make this country a better place. But okay, Ukraine, we'll sign a bill to give you $3 trillion. But no, I won't give an American 20,000. You've heard me repeat this time and time again. So here we are. I kind of, I always get into this because it bothers me so much. But here we are. October it started. 40% of the people haven't been able to restart their payments. And that equates to 9 million people have no clue how they'll survive. At least a good portion of that 9 million people. I'm going to leave that alone because for now, we will revisit it in the new year. But that was just to give you a little tidbit news of what's in the news. The second what's in the news part is yesterday the Colorado Supreme Court decided that the state of Colorado could remove ex-president or former President Donald Trump from their ballots for their presidential elections. This is a really interesting development. I'm mentioning it only because it seems like we have an ex-president who is probably in court more than any person in any other citizen in the United States, and occupying more time in the news and using up more of our taxpayer dollars than anyone else. I find it a little disturbing that out of 350 million, probably census counted Americans, and out of the 72 million Republicans that voted in the last election, that one person can't be found as a worthy candidate, as a presidential candidate, who is not the ex-president and doesn't envelop the whole nation in this saga, this I don't know what to call it, soap opera. What's interesting here is I'm waiting to see whether the Supreme Court will take this up. My bet is that, well, I don't have a bet. I would say that if they don't and they sidestep it, that's one interesting scenario because I think there's like 14 other states that are pursuing this same angle. If they do take it up, my bet is that they will rule that he should remain on the ballot. Not whether I agree or disagree. Don't get me wrong. That's not my position. I'm just saying that we have such a political court that impartial judiciary is not descriptive of what our legal system is anymore. I just feel that with all the struggles that we have as Americans, we need two candidates who represent the values of all Americans, who represents knowledge and understanding of the struggles of every aspect that is important to Americans, financially, ethically, racially, in every aspect, climate, everything that we can think about. They debate that, and we choose the one who will take us forward united. Yes, there's differences in ideology between Democrat and Republican and Libertarian and Independent. But I'll bet you that if not for this election, surely for the next one, we're going to see a bigger shift as I think more Americans and younger Americans are moving towards independence. And that puts a smile on my face because I want to see that. It's time for this aristocracy in Washington to change and for Washington to become once again for the people, by the people, in whatever form we can get it to that place. So most of you probably know that news already, but I just thought I would give my thoughts on it because I really want to see what the Supreme Court's going to do and then what happens after that. If the Supreme Court rules in favor of the Colorado Supreme Court, then we have a whole different discussion, right? The former president has attacked the judiciary a lot, and human beings are human beings, so that may have a play in it irrespective of, right? Anyway, on to the last part of this podcast, which is the main part of this podcast, and that is reflection of the year gone and what this season represents. For those of us who believe in our Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior, in the birth of the Son of our Creator who was sent in this earth to take us who are so sinful and pay the price for forgiveness of our sins, we hold dear this season because it represents to us freedom from ourselves and forgiveness, like I said, and the compassion of our Creator. Whether you believe or not, if you're a good person, you can take away the fundamentals of giving, caring, loving, compassion for all. This should be part of what emanates from you as a human being. You often hear me talk about this podcast and the things I do and the things I strive to become and do as my payment as well of what I owe for being able to breathe the air and earn my way as part of life and being present on this earth. Life is a privilege. In case we forget, every single day we lose people around us. We usually don't really feel the impact until we lose someone we know and care about. But every day in this world, someone loses someone they love and they care about. Some people lose someone that's been ill for a while and they were sort of not expected to make it, and it's still painful. You know, that's the thing about the life that we take for granted. You can have someone who's ill, who's been not expected to make it, and they're clinging for days and weeks and months. And yet when they do pass, it's still as raw as if it happened all of a sudden. Then you have the ones that happen all of a sudden, but the person is elderly. Then you have those that die from tragedies, from accidents, or from illnesses at all different ages. And no matter what happens, the pain is real. Those circumstances, those experiences should be part of what we understand or help us understand what this gift of life is. How important it is to live a good life. How important happiness is. How important this conversation we have and this fight for a better life is. Imagine if you were born into a life of oppression, of poverty, of pain, and you go through your entire life until the day you die, and you struggle to think of and remember moments that you had a reason to smile. Imagine if you went through life where all you could remember is pain and hunger, people being unkind to you, being unable to afford decent clothes and people looking down on you, people treating you less than because of the color of your skin, irrespective of how decent you are as a human being. We need to recognize that no matter what we have in these materialistic things, who we are, and for those of us who hold dear to our Creator, whose we are. As we reflect upon life, and we reflect upon this coming Christmas day and this Christmas season, irrespective of what you believe. I plead with you to take the goodness of humanity with you, in your heart, in your minds, and in your actions. I plead with you to use what we learned in the Bible, whether you read it, believe it or not. It is a good book to live your life by, to understand how kindness, how love, how all the results of doing good can bring a joy and happiness and a peace that surpasses all understanding. I personally have been through so many challenges in my life thus far. And for those of you who share faith like I do, I can tell you that my solution is prayer. And I've been through some tough moments, and my faith has never let me down. And for my faith, my Creator has never let me down. We've walked down rough paths, but I've made it. And so for this Christmas season, I call on you to extend yourselves in gratitude and love and in joy to those around you, to share kindness, to not turn a blind eye to those in need when you know that you can help those in need. We can't help everyone, but many of us are in a position to do so, and we don't make the effort. It just seems like too much for us to do. Share the gifts that you have with others. I promise you that the joy in helping, the joy in caring, and the joy in loving is what this life is about. And that will be your joy of Christmas. I wish you, your family, your friends, your relatives, near and far, a very Merry Christmas filled with peace, joy, happiness, and love. And until we speak again before the new year, do me and do yourselves a favor. Take care of yourselves and each other.